In this exercise, I'm going to show you how to do the opposite of what we learned in the previous exercise. That is, how to scale and move and otherwise transform tile patterns independently of their objects. So you don't change the objects, you change the tile patterns instead. I've saved my progress as greenmanandcircle.ai, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this graphic a little bit here. And I'll select all the objects on this layer by clicking on the black wedge in the upper left corner of the test shape layer. And now everything's selected, and I'm going to double click on the scale tool because let's say I want to go ahead and scale my tile pattern at this point, but I don't want to scale the objects. So I'm going to turn off objects, and that's going to automatically turn on patterns for me. And this is what I should see. I should see all of my tile patterns change, including inside of the stroke. So inside the circle, along the stroke of the circle, outside in the rectangle as well, all of those items should change. And note that I've applied a scale value of 86%. Now, if you don't see everything change, I'm going to cancel out here. For example, if your stroke does not scale, why then what you need to do is go to your appearance panel, press Control-Shift-A, Command-Shift-A in the Mac to deselect everything. Press the V key in order to get your black arrow tool. Click on that path outline right there on the circle, and just go ahead and click on the top stroke before you do anything else. Just make that stroke active so Illustrator's not confused about whether this stroke is part of the equation or not. Then go back to the Layers panel and click on that black wedge in the upper left-hand corner of Test Shape. And try again. Go over to the Scale tool, double-click on it to bring up the Scale dialog box. Turn off objects. That'll automatically turn on patterns. Leave Scale and Stroke Effects off for this effect. And I'm applying, again, a scale value of 86%. I'll click OK. And the same thing can be done with Rotate and Slant as well, by the way. So if I grab my Rotate tool, I'll double-click on it to bring up the Rotate dialog box. Notice that the Rotate dialog box is remembering that I don't want to rotate the objects and I do want to rotate the patterns. So it goes ahead and respects the selection of the options inside the other transformation dialog boxes as well. I'll click OK to accept that modification. Another thing you can do is apply the Shear tool, which slants objects inside of Illustrator. So I'll go ahead and select that tool from the Scale tool flyout menu. Then I'll double click on it to bring up the Shear dialog box. And you can apply any amount of slant that you want to. A positive value is going to slant everything forward. A negative value is going to slant it backward. Right now we're slanting along a horizontal axis, but you could change that if you want to. You can even slant along an angled axis. For example, I'm going to say I want to slant along a 30-degree axis, like so. And I might slant a little more than this. I'll take up this slant value to 15 degrees, let's say. Click OK. And now let's say I want to move this green guy back into the center of the circle. Why then I would do that by double-clicking on the Selection tool. And now, notice Objects is off, Patterns is on, Preview is on. I'm going to have to feel my way through this modification. So I'm going to change the vertical value to -60, let's say. I'm not exactly sure what I need for this. Actually, we're going to have to go lower with this value, so I'm pressing Shift-down arrow in order to scoot that guy up. So it doesn't make that much sense that negative values scoot things up, but that's the way it works. And then I'll have to change the horizontal value to a negative value as well to scoot things to the right. So I'll try -20 maybe and press the tab key. That's not enough, so I'll press Shift down arrow in order to scoot them over like so. And that looks pretty darn good to me. And watch, by the way, to make sure that your stroke moves along with everything else. The thing that you have to bear in mind is as soon as you click OK, if you decide now, gosh, you know what? I want to move this circle independently of the background. So I'll click off the circle, then I'll click on it to select it. And of course, when I click on it, I'm looking for that little black square next to my cursor to show me that's where the path outline is. As soon as I click on it and I start dragging, notice that I will go ahead and move the tile pattern along with the object. And so that totally ruins the alignment between the stroke of the circle in particular and the background. I'll press Control-Z, Command-Z on a Mac to undo that move. What you need to do is go back into the Move dialog box or one of the others. But I'll double-click on the Selection tool to bring up the Move dialog box, and I'm just going to change these two values to 0. So just zero everything out and say that you want to move the objects and not the patterns. Notice that Illustrator automatically turned objects back on because I dragged inside of the illustration. So anytime you perform a manual adjustment, a manual transformation, then you are going to change those objects. Just note that. So if you want to change the patterns, you have to do it from inside the dialog box. Anyway, I'll turn objects on, turn patterns off, click OK. That doesn't do anything because I didn't apply any values. Now, though, as soon as I start dragging and I missed, I'll go ahead and try that again. When I drag that circle to a different location, then the circle moves and the tile patterns do not. And that way I maintain alignment between my various objects in the tile pattern throughout my modifications. And that, my friends, is not only how you master the mind of MC Escher and how you create seamlessly interlocking crazy objects like these, but this is also how you create and use and manipulate tile patterns inside of Illustrator.